All right. Good afternoon, you guys. How
Boy.
are you today?
What's going on?
I'm nervous.
You should be nervous.
Nervous but
we're
prepared.
ZenGig. This is live with Gen XYZ. I'm Pete.
I'm Peter.
Ashley. I'm Ashley.
We are the
And-
three generations.
And
Yes,
we have the generations covered. So of course I'm Gen X, Peter's
Gen
the
Y.
millennial, Gen Y, and today our topic is all about Gen Z. You're on the hot seat, Ashley.
Okay, I'm ready.
Well, let's start. We're gonna do something a little bit differently today. So we're gonna start with a little video that I found that I think sets the stage pretty well for what we're gonna talk about. So let me share my screen. Not something we've done before on the fly. So let's see if this works. But here we go. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
We can.
All right, Ashley. I think this sets the tone pretty well for what we're gonna talk about today.
Gen Z doesn't know how to write a check. They don't know how to address an envelope. They don't know how to read cursive. They don't know how to read a paper map. They can't get anywhere unless there's a GPS map on their phone. All I'm saying is if Gen Z takes over the world, it's going to be pretty easy to get it back. We're just going to write our battle plans in cursive on a piece of paper.
All right. So what do you think, Ashley? Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment? No cursive.
Do you know cursive?
So I learned cursive in second grade. They teach you in second grade. I don't even think they teach kids cursive anymore, but I learned in second grade. Only thing I remember is how to write my first name and my last name. Nothing else.
That's
So
it.
I learned the whole alphabet, and I don't remember a single thing. Why? Because we never used it for anything else other than to write our signature. So
To be fair, yeah, it is. I only use it for my signature. So if I had to write like a whole sentence in cursive, I would probably struggle.
and it's not like every year they made us practice. I'm pretty sure we just practiced that 1 year, and then next year they were just like, forget it. Like, just do your first and last name. They never like did a refresh in third grade, never did a refresh in fourth grade, so it was like impossible for us to keep up with it.
So they taught you, concluded you'll never have to actually use it, and just moved on. They checked the box and said that's
At least they
And
recognize
then-
that. Yeah.
I know, I mean, maybe in some schools they still teach it, but I do have a friend that's a teacher, and she's like, we don't teach them cursive anymore, just because it's not, people don't use it unless you're signing a check, which we'll get to that next.
Well,
But,
yeah.
So can you read cursive? Just because you can't write.
I feel like certain letters, yes, I can slightly remember, but it's still like kind of.
So you're fluent in 3 languages, and yet you struggle to read cursive. Okay, I think that's
very
what
Gen Z thing.
makes you a solid
But-
Gen Z.
I don't think it's necessarily the Gen Zers' fault. I mean, we should have been taught it for like a couple more years, and people should have practiced it more with us. So I feel like it's the older generation's fault for not, keeping up with it with us.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Well, the question becomes, does it matter, right? I mean, do you need to use it? Now we have all the AI tools that are becoming so prevalent, and teachers are struggling with that in school as students are using it. And yeah, the question in the near future is going to be, is that a battle that anyone should fight, right? How much do kids need to learn how to write well, if it's a skill that technology makes it so they're never really going to have to use? And I don't know where I land on that yet, but
I mean-
you see where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I've never used cursive at work. I've never really used cursive outside of work. Only time I've used it was literally to either sign a check or like some paperwork at the doctor's office. Other than that, nothing.
Just wait till those analog things come back around in style. They're going to be like vinyl records.
Oh
where
god.
it's writing in cursive again.
All right,
All
what's
right,
the next?
so let's get into the stereotypes. And so that's one of them. Check the box. Gen Z can't write cursive, but no one is asking you to do that at work. I don't
Yep.
really want to see any social media strategy or plans in cursive, so I won't be asking you to do that anytime soon. So you're
Well,
okay
it does kind of fit in with the addicted to technology kind of general umbrella that Gen Z falls under, a stereotype that you guys can't get along without using some form of technology, doing things on your own.
Well, I mean, whoever invented maps and stuff just made it easier. Why are we going to look at a
Because of
paper map?
cartographers.
Why are we going to look at a paper map if we have easy access on our phones to get wherever we want? And I feel like it's probably even more accurate. It tells you when to go left, it tells you when to go right. I remember when I was younger, my parents weren't that good with technology. And what was it called? Quest Map? It was like that online
Yep.
thing you would print
Yeah.
out. I'd always have to print it out for them, and we used that first before Google Maps. And even that, my parent, we'd all still be really, really confused reading the directions and stuff. So, I mean, at least we know how to read that.
Yeah, that took me
But-
down a number of dead end alleys. I used to use that
Yeah.
early in my sales career. I would print it out where I was going for the day, and it wasn't the most accurate. But fortunately, I'm so old that I know how to navigate by stars, so it's fine.
He breaks out his sextant, like he's going on.
But
Right.
you see, even though we have all this technology at our hands, and we don't know how to read maps or we don't know how to write cursive, the beauty of technology, if we wanted to teach ourselves how to do it, technology could teach us. So.
Okay, so you're saying that unlike the millennials, I think we concluded last week, the millennials are sort of the helpless generation.
Yeah, we don't know how to do
Everything
anything.
for 'em?
So
You're
you
saying
guys
it's come
can
back
you're saying
around.
you can teach yourself to do everything with the help of YouTube.
I mean, that's how it's been growing up, at least for me personally. I had to teach myself a lot of stuff in college. I learned a lot of stuff. I was an iPad kid growing up, so I learned a lot of stuff on my iPad.
I
my
get
ABCs and
that
stuff,
because
so.
when my kids started using social media a lot, I was concerned about things they'd be exposed to. You hear about all the predatory stuff that happens on there, and so that's a scary thing to navigate for sure. But I was also incredibly impressed by how innovative and creative they were, the memes that they would come up with, the humor that they would use, and it just it took my generation certainly didn't do those things when we were young. I mean, we communicated in very basic ways by comparison. So I kind of love the creativity that comes with all of that.
And I feel like also, sometimes technology doesn't always work. I've had times where I'm driving and maps all of a sudden there's no service. It's not working for me. So somehow I was able to teach myself how to look at my maps on my phone. Okay, this route looks like it's gonna make a right. So then, I mean, obviously you're gonna make a couple mistakes here and there, but it's not that hard to look at a map.
Is that sort of have you guys ever seen a video of the people who were riding on an escalator and they're dressed in for business and the escalator stops and they start yelling for help? They're like, hey, hello, this escalator's broken. Someone needs to fix it. And they're completely helpless and trapped. So that's how you feel when the technology is not available to you.
Sometimes, yeah, I feel a little urge of panic, but then I remember okay, calm down, just take a closer look at it. Maybe again, it's our ways of self-teaching ourselves sometimes. So
We're talking about millennials being helpless. I mean, that's the Gen Z, or they're helpless when technology doesn't work then. And you guys, it actually works so much and it's so easy. You guys don't know how to fix it or if it's not, immediately present working.
Yeah, that's a downside. I mean, that's a real downside to all of this is what happens when these things aren't available. But I also think that it's hard for any generation alive today to get away from that, right? I mean, I'm just as guilty as far as the thought of being without my phone when I travel now. And I do think about these things all the time because I live life without it, right? We talked about pagers last week. And I know what it's like to not have a cell phone. I mean, I still think most of my life I've lived without a cell phone now, but I still can't imagine how that would be today.
I mean, I guess Gen Z can be pretty resourceful. So especially when it comes to technology, we have so much stuff I have an iPad, I have my Apple Watch, I have like my laptop, and I feel like if one thing stops working, we just go on to another device, and that solves like a temporary problem. So like let's just say for work, like let's just say one day my phone stopped working or like I cracked and like all my stuff is on my phone. I have everything backed up on my laptop and on my iPad. So if I wanted to resort to the next solution, I guess that's a Gen Z thing. We just jump onto the next thing that's working. So
All right. So
it's not
if you're
really
watching
involved.
on LinkedIn right now, please join in, participate, ask. Let's share the stereotypes of Gen Z. Ashley did her homework. I'm impressed. You were off on Friday. You were off yesterday. I thought you were going off to the beach to have fun, but I'm thinking you spent the last 4 days preparing for this, so
No,
you could defend your generation effectively. You're doing well so far.
the best way to combat stereotypes is to prove them wrong.
Well,
So,
let's. I'm not sure you're doing that either. I think you can't write cursive.
well,
You can't read a map,
but I
but
am validating
Yeah.
why I can't. So,
absolutely. So it's not your
Gen
fault, which is
X's fault.
also a characteristic of the Gen Z generation,
Yes.
right? You can't. Can you guys take credit for your own success, or can you take the blame for your lack of success, or is it really the fault of the generations that have come before you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like maybe it's the generations before us because we kind of follow in their footsteps and whatever habits sometimes they develop gets passed down to us. So thanks a lot, millennials. The
Okay.
whole sometimes I feel like the whole participation trophy thing that we talked about with millennials last week was also passed down to my generation. But again, like we discussed before, is it the parents' fault for, rewarding us so much? Or is it like, what we were taught at school, like always giving, like people would give us stickers and, we wouldn't even do like the job correctly, but yet we'd still be rewarded. So then the next time we do it, we'd be like, I want a sticker. So maybe again, I think it's the previous generation's fault for how we handle success today.
Oh.
So so back to technology. Let's move on from that one in a minute. But are you addicted to it? That's the knock. That's the real characteristic that gets shared a lot. Are you addicted? And then is that impacting your work in a negative way? So I know that people there's memes that go around about how much time someone actually spends working in the day, and it's I spend X number of hours checking TikTok and Twitter and Facebook, and how much of that really does impact you in the workplace where you are addicted and can't put the phone down.
So I will right off the bat say I'm addicted, so much so I feel like it even gave me like a little bit of ADHD and like makes me hard to focus sometimes because like growing up we're always just like, look, I even have it with me right now. I don't know why it's right in front of me, but I always feel the need to always either hold it or like have it right in front of me. My grandma would always yell at me saying, "Why are you holding this thing everywhere you go?" Like I'll be going to like fill up my water, it's in my hand. I don't know why.
It's your comfort thing. You just got to have it with you.
I feel like I'm gonna get like a notification, and as soon as it pings, like I have to constantly look at it. Like I guess it's just how we grew up. We're like glued to this thing, and it is hard when we work. So especially with me, I'm in marketing, so everything I work with, I'm working with Instagram, I'm working with TikTok, I'm working with all the social media platforms. So as soon as I open that app, sometimes when I'm on TikTok and I'm scrolling through ideas, I'll go through a little bit of a downward spiral. I'm like, ooh, look at her shoes, or oh, like this is funny. And I'm like, wait a second. No, like I'm working right now. Like this should not be happening. So I mean, we are glued to it, but it's at least for me, I don't know about other Gen Zs, it's easier for me to snap back. Um, but I feel like it does make it hard for me to focus sometimes with like
You
a
guys
lot
can
of
do
things.
everything with technology except focus on one specific task and
Yes.
not get distracted.
But I mean, like it has made me like an amazing multitasker. And I won't say that multitasking is a terrible thing. I can like get a lot done. I feel like I'm more efficient, especially since like the past generations have given us like a bunch of tools to make us multitaskers. So like look at ChatGPT. That was just thrown at my lap. I'm going to use that, and at the same time as I'm getting ChatGPT to write me a prompt, I'm going to go post this TikTok. So again, this is probably ADHD me rambling about stuff now. I like
Well, there's a lot of psychology behind that, and if you've read about deep work, then there's a strong case to be made that multitasking is something that really your brain can't do well, can't handle, and that it actually works against you. But you probably don't subscribe to that, do you?
Mm-mm.
So
No, I
you
don't
think
so.
that, all right, so you're working on 3 different, and this is, I'll speak from my own experience and tell you like how it affects me and see if it's the same. Like if I'm working on 3 different things at the same time and switching between, I can get all 3 done, but they're not going to be at like 100% quality on all 3. Can you do that? Or, I mean, if it's 3 things that just need to be good enough, then that's fine. But if you're really focusing on one thing and someone interrupts you, that affects the quality of the thing you were, trying to put 100% of your attention into.
Yeah, I mean, like if I am going back to something, I'll be like, oh man, like where did I just leave off? And then I'll have to like study that for a little bit to like figure out where to pick up back like where I left off. But yeah, I mean, I guess when that does happen, it's not as good quality because like I feel like the certain need to like constantly get things done. And then I look back at it and I'm like, oh, like that could have been better. So then sometimes I'll go back to it again. But I feel like another reason why we multitask is because, again, on our phone, that's all we do. We're multitasking on our phones. We have a bunch of different apps opened up. We're going from one thing to another, from one thing to another. So I feel like that's kind of carried on to the workplace, at least for me.
So you mentioned the ADD. I mean, that just goes hand in hand. But do you think that that makes you less productive versus more productive? You're trying to play it off as being more productive. I agree with Peter. I think that you might feel busier. You might feel like you're getting more accomplished, but I don't know that the quality can be there if you're constantly distracted and having to reset your brain over and over. I don't think that's how humans were wired.
It's also not good for you to be like constantly feeling busy. I mean, that's why like, Gen Z are like half of them have anxiety about everything. It being busy and being always tuned in is not good for humans. And that's like so ingrained in Gen Z and their generation. I mean, they grew up with technology, so I don't know how to get away from it or
Well, I don't know that Gen Z knows another way.
anything. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And and who knows, right? Maybe look, evolution is a thing, obviously. So that maybe we're all, maybe that thought process is going to have to change, that, maybe the human brain really can accommodate multitasking in a way that historically has been thought to be impossible. I don't know. I don't have enough, psychology knowledge and training to weigh in on that. But I do know for sure that you guys, because I'm a parent of 4 Gen Zers, who you guys live differently, you operate differently. You can't, my kids don't have the ability. It's innate with them, and I don't know where that ultimately leads. Right? I think we're going to all find out in the years to come.
I think we're even trying to figure it out ourselves. So
Okay, so that leads to one of the other stereotypes, which I think is true, which is you're hard to you're not satisfied with any one thing very long, and that to make that about work, it leads to a lot of job hopping.
Mhm.
We know that is a thing. Do you agree that your generation is a bunch of job hoppers?
um, it's hard to say necessarily from my generation because we're all just entering the workforce now. Well, a good percentage of us. I mean, I'll do say, sorry, millennials, we can relate to this. We probably did, if we are job hopping, we probably did get it from you guys, and for a reason. We probably like learned that maybe if we get like better pay at this job, let's go to that job. Or maybe we'll be happier in this environment, let's go to that environment. So I feel like it's a habit that we picked up um, from the millennials.
You saying the lack of loyalty to a single employer is, I mean, that I don't necessarily know if that's a millennial. That's just the nature of the economic world since, I mean, what, 2008, I guess, in my entire professional life. I do have the Gen Z people that I've worked with. I've seen multiple times where they'll work for 6 months and they'll be like, all right, where's my promotion? I deserve this because I am good at my job for a couple of months, and I'm like, that's great, but I really don't think you're as good as you think you are, in that short of a time frame. I don't think that anybody can truly have mastered something.
I mean,
So,
I
Peter,
have.
Sorry, go ahead, Ash.
I will give you that. I will say I have some Gen Z friends that I have seen them be like, they're just like a year into the job and they like want something to happen really quickly for them. And I guess everyone's mindset is different. I'm a weird Gen Z, I guess, where I like mentally know that like I'm not ready for a promotion yet. Whereas some people are like, I want one right now, and I'm like, are you ready for one? And they'll be like, yeah, but they're not. So I guess it depends on the mindset.
So there's want versus deserve, right?
Yeah.
And earned. I mean, those are very different things. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that, the ability to stop and think critically about that is always taken into consideration, or not the ability to, but just doing it and saying, okay, I want this and I feel compelled to have it, but have I really earned it? And then what does it really take to earn it? And do I deserve it based on any objective criteria versus just because I've showed up for the past 6 months? And that's where I think is a dangerous mindset with really young professionals who either think one way or the other, right? Those who think longer term, think a little more objectively, are going to be better off in the workplace.
And
I don't think that there's a time. I don't want to sound like somebody needs to work a certain amount of time to do that. But like, if you've worked 90 days and at your 90 days, you're like, all right, give me, I get a raise and whatever, because I had a great last 2 weeks. Like, okay, that's a very short time frame in the grand scheme of things. Like, that doesn't prove that, just because you got lucky for, the last couple days or the last couple weeks, that's not gonna show how you're gonna do for the next 2 years.
And I guess that's where the whole, again, I brought this up earlier. We were just given stickers as kids for just doing the bare minimum. So I feel like now taking this into like the workplace, people are like, okay, I'm doing my job. Give me my
You
my
need that
sticker, my
dopamine rush, that
promotion.
instant gratification. You're like, where's my? I gotta
Yeah.
get a promotion. All right, now this is old. Where's my next thing? I gotta keep
And
moving on.
I feel like with my generation, especially if they're not given that, they're not as motivated. I feel like you see a lack of motivation.
Yeah, that I agree with that. I also think so much of this is I think millennial bleeding in, and where that line is. I mean, it's impossible to draw it too succinctly, but this concept, which is foreign to me, but I've heard it a lot from younger professionals, which is I have to be I need outside praise in order to be motivated, and that is an interesting thing, and I think that's very generational. Where my generation does not need someone else to motivate us. We have to, that needs to come from within. But Peter, don't you think that's a millennial trait too?
I think I'll separate that to digital and analog type of thing. Like, that's millennials and on. People who had social media, people who could see others. So maybe that's where that external validation comes, because you can see other people advancing, doing great. So you're like, I compare myself to others, so I need to feel like I'm doing well.
So surprisingly, because of this, a lot of the times Gen Z or even millennials, they'll go on a social media cleanse just because like seeing people's lives and their success sometimes will make you so like drive you so crazy. You have to just block yourself out for a little bit and just do your thing, because you become so fixated on trying to, be like this person, like especially like influencers, they're showing you their everyday lives and timestamps, and it's like absolutely perfect. So I feel like with my generation especially, we strive for that perfection, even though it's realistic. It's not realistic. That's a big one. and it's really not going to get us anywhere.
Well,
So,
it's hard in the in the workplace. Like you look at LinkedIn, you've got the LinkedIn influencers that
yeah.
are like, I'm a director here and I was a vice president here and I'm 25
Yep.
years old. And
But it's a weird contradiction in a way to me as an observer to this, because I feel like your generation is very collectivist, where you want everyone to, you don't, you know, it's the opposite of individualism, in that I'm worried about myself. You want to worry about everyone, but yet you know, you want everyone to do well, but you also tend to point at those people with envy, right? And
Mhm.
say, oh, this person stands out, so I need to stop. Like it's, I don't, I don't know why that's confusing. There's always superstars. There's always been people who are lucky, unique, right? I mean, I wish I were 6'9" and, you know, could run, you know, a 4040, right? I mean, I would be able to be a professional athlete, but I'm not. But I understand that others are. I don't see that as any. I don't look at that, maybe with some degree of envy, but now it's people who are, you know, for whatever reason, they were super funny, they were uniquely attractive, whatever reason they had the social media following, or in some cases, like we've talked about Mr. Beast a few times, he's worked really hard behind the scenes to achieve what he has. But there's always outliers like that. Is it just because it's in your face more?
yeah, you didn't have that in your face growing up, like seeing
Yeah.
that, you know, constantly. Like it's like if at your high school, you know, there was a bunch of like better looking, taller, like faster, like funnier people, and they were constantly always around you, so that like you're always just seeing them, and you're
So
like,
is that
all
what
right.
it is? Maybe that is like, because we're on social media, you see the YouTubers, you see the influencers, whatever. But they all, yeah, maybe. I mean, but I don't.
Yeah.
On a
It makes
day-to-day
you feel
And
like they're really around you, even though they're
and
not.
this is why again people do the social media cleanse, because they're tired of having this person in their face. But at the same time, it's like that envy can turn into motivation. But the bad thing about it also is we're all trying to be the same. Like no one I feel like is becoming uniquely themselves because they want to be exactly like that person. They want to have everything that person has. So then you start trying to be them and you kind of lose touch of like who you are. So then you're like, what about the things I like? Like this product doesn't work for me, or like this job doesn't work for me. Why am I doing it just because someone else is like doing it? So I feel like that might also mess up with like your work life, low key.
Well, there's a hive mentality at times. There's a mentality of yeah, like wanting to go along with what everyone else is doing. But I think that's
Mhm.
always existed to some degree. I think it's
The
all highlighted because
collectivism,
of
the
social media.
the looking out for others. I mean, that does give me a little bit of hope for humanity and the Gen Z. They are nicer. They do care about each other and, you know, the future generations. So I'll give you that shout out there. I think the jealousy part, that's just human nature. Like being like,
Yeah.
even if you're the nicest person in the world,
We're
you're going to have those
competitive.
feelings internally.
We're
So, Peter, you
competitive.
mentioned something that I want to go back to. It's a word that I think you've mentioned before on these, and it's loyalty.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's something that millennials and maybe Gen Z too find. Um, I find it interesting that you expect that, or you want that, but you don't think it exists. Where I don't think of loyalty as being, I think everyone's a free agent,
Mhm.
right? So I think your loyalty should only go as far as you should be loyal to yourself, right? And in an organization, inherently, my experience and perspective is going to be loyal to whatever their mission is as an organization, whether it's to sell shoes, whether it's to you know, make movies, whatever that is. That's what the business is going to be loyal to. But there's been this blend now of expecting more from the employer,
You
right?
don't
Be
think that
loyal to a cause beyond what you're in business to do, and that's still foreign to me. And I know that it's prevalent. I know it exists. There's social scores, there's environmental scores that businesses get that have nothing to do with the business that they're in. But I feel like that's something that is even more important to Gen Z than it has been to millennials, where you want more from the brand than just what they exist to do.
Yeah, that's definitely something I see with younger generations. And loyalty to their own employees, which is, I guess, a thing that is not, a lot of companies don't have that. They behave contrary to that. I think that that's something that's really prevalent with millennials and with Gen Z, is looking for companies that if they treat you right, you're going to treat them right, type of thing. And that has not historically always been the case, especially with some larger, companies where you're just a number or what have you. I think that has been kind of it's growing, and now, like you said, there's that external thing. Whereas, they Gen Z and to a degree, millennials, they demand more of companies, especially ones they're going to patronize. Like, they want them to be environmentally friendly or whatever if they're going to buy their products. So I think that's part of the marketplace. That's if that's what the customer wants, then that's what the companies have to give. So.
And I feel like, again, this is when social media like plays a big part into the workplace. So a lot of the times in our faces we see people recording their lives like around work. So they'll be like, oh, my boss said this, and they'll kind of be like talking poorly, and then they go to another job and they're showing how much better like their life is now. So it's like people start getting that mindset like, oh, they were treated poorly, like maybe like I'm gonna go find loyalty somewhere else. Like, again, I feel like social media is a huge influence.
Yeah, well, so there are a couple things come to mind. There was a video, I think it's about 6 months ago now. I think it was a LinkedIn employee of all things, right? So maybe they'll shut us off on the live stream when we start talking about this, who was showing a day in the life of her job. Did you guys see this? I think she was in a big city, and it was like, it was a 1 minute, it was probably a TikTok video, but showing up for work, and I go to the snack bar and make a smoothie, and then I go to the relaxation lounge for a while. I mean, the whole thing was about anything but work. And you got the impression this person worked for a couple of minutes
to do nothing.
but it was all just this kind of elaborate things that the employer put in place for the employee to enjoy themselves and not really having anything to do with the actual job. And so you see that, and my thoughts are go to a couple places. One, you're trying to say, hey, this company is better, cares about employees more, is more fun to work with than your employer. And that was the entire point, I think. But it was also sort of misguided, where it just kind of showed just a complete lack of respect for what you're actually supposed to be doing. And that's the wrong word to use, but it kind of backfired because it's not reality, right? Companies can't just, would every company love to pay every employee $1 million and give them unlimited vacation time and gifts and a beautiful, workplace that looked like a Ritz-Carlton? Of course, but it's not realistic. It's not practical. So I think I can see why that kind of thing does harbor, bring up bad feelings in others, right? You see that and think, I'm not necessarily, I think I'm supposed to be happy for you and I want what you have, but it's sort of, it doesn't, I don't know what kind of message that sends when it's just not realistic for employers to do.
And again, that's the issue. Social media just keeps putting out unrealistic stuff. They aren't showing the realities of it. Show, what your day-to-day life at work is realistically, and then people will start like realizing that what their lives are like at work is completely normal. It's normal to make mistakes. It's normal to have to sit in front of your computer and not in a relaxation chair drinking a smoothie. But like, again, social media makes it seem like it's a terrible thing to be on your computer and not like go get that smoothie and not have like that break. So, I mean, realistically, everyone's like should, be working hard and showing that hardship. I don't know why no one's showing the hardship and they're just showing like more of like the luxury perks, which
because
not
no, don't you think it's because no one really wants that truth, that answer?
No one wants to see that, like here's how hard my work day is, and just like them filing papers.
But
and
it's
Peter knows that this is before you were here. You were still in high school probably when this happened, but we had a consultant who we hired. Peter would know this, and the message was be more like Google. Like, what does that mean? Well, be more like Google. You're supposed to make work fun. And that is something that, definitely was prevalent a couple of years ago. I think it's been, obviously it's pulled back because of COVID and working at home, but that was a big thing where companies were one-upping each other. And we even fell into it. I mean, that's why we have a keg in the office, and we had
the stuff they would do is not even like real benefit. Like most people, they care about like their health insurance and their 401k and like their pay. And like, that's it. Like, you don't need to provide all others and be respected at work. And so like Google, and I think it's come out now. Sorry, Google, if you're watching, they did most of this to keep people on site longer. They're like, we'll provide showers and food and everything so they could keep their developers working longer shifts, so they would stay there and not go home. I mean,
that's a great point though. So you're sending out a message, but the message isn't real.
Yeah, exactly. They're self-serving. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
But but there's some truth to it, right? Where you guys said, I think you both said that it is important for the brand to do more, right? So, look at Bud Light. Like, let's just talk about that for a second. So Bud Light put out an ad trying to be socially conscious in what they thought was what people wanted. And it seemed to completely backfire them because they didn't, they sort of went down a path that Bud Light had never gone down before, really changed what anyone was used to seeing from them. So do you think companies need to do that from in the workplace, or can Bud Light just be worrying about making beer and staying in their lane, so to speak, with that?
I think if a company has a good enough product, I mean, if they're just selling a product, not a service, then that's different. And it's good enough, it stands on its own. I mean, I think that they can just focus on that. They don't need to necessarily take a stand. If the point is to get publicity with marketing, that's a whole other, can of worms. But I think that if the customers aren't asking them to, make their beer with more sustainable ingredients and stuff like that, they aren't going to do it. But if all of the drinkers of the beer are like, I want all of Bud Light to be gluten-free now, and I'm not going to buy it if it's not, then that's the market. They got to change their recipe and they got to make it like that.
But then it's not Bud Light.
That's the nature. You either change or you die. That's the nature of the market. So we can talk about it and whether they should or should not. The fact of the matter is that Gen Z and younger generations, they're demanding certain things of certain companies. I think that they need to take that into account.
But does that demand ultimately do more harm than good? Is what I want to know, because if you look at Disney right now, we're in Florida, and we're specifically in Central Florida, where there's a political fight between Disney and our governor, and to me that's just so bizarre and such a Disney shouldn't be political. I think government should generally stay out of business, although there's a lot of ties where it's not that simple with a company as big as Disney. But do you think that that companies should enter into that world of politics?
I think it's case by case. I think if a private company can do whatever they want. So
sure they can. Well, they're not a private company, but
not a non-government subsidized company can do whatever they want.
But sure, they can. The answer is, should they? Is that something you expect from your employer, Ashley? And does generationally, not you individually, but that's a thing that is becoming prevalent, and I don't know where that leads, because at the end of the day, does Disney ultimately benefit by going down that path and knowing that you are going to satisfy some and upset others? Why not just abstain altogether from it? But does Peter? This is supposed to be about Gen Z, but I think millennials are who started all this. We need our employer to
satisfaction gets them more than the dissatisfaction. That's what they're going to do. I look at everything they're not going to Disney or Google or YouTube or any of these companies, they're not going to do anything unless there is a benefit to it. Like they're doing it for a reason. And it's not just because they decided to do it and that's the right thing to do. You have to look at it that
Okay,
way.
so you're saying, and are we saying then the business will ultimately serve the business? So effectively what you're suggesting is all of that is really disingenuous in the first place. And
Yeah.
it's not because they care so much about the movement. It's because they think it will help increase their profits.
That is 100% correct. And I think that Gen Z and millennials like that's coming, like that's pretty commonplace knowledge, I think. And that's why like, you know, guerrilla marketing is a thing, because it's very easy to see when something's like fake and, you know, what the ulterior motive is. So I think that's.
Do you believe that, Ashley? Because that sounds counterintuitive in a way, where if you think they're only doing it to increase their bottom line, then why give them credit for doing it at all? If if you're just saying they don't really mean it, and whoever they is, I don't know in this case, right? Is it a marketing person? Is it whoever owns a company? But I personally think, again, this is me, old school. I don't need advice on things from Disney other than what Disney's there to provide, which is entertainment to me. I don't need advice from, a beer maker on social policies. I just want them to make the best beer possible. But that is something generationally that's different, where you guys want more out of your brand. But if you don't believe it's real, what's the point in the first place?
I mean,
We stumped her.
Well, I mean, I
did.
guess,
You
Peter,
did.
that maybe you're the one that's throwing that out there, that people should consider. Like, even though you're giving the business credit and like, oh, I'm glad they take this stand. If you're
I'm not
pointing out
sure.
that this
Maybe they're
is
not,
sort of-
you know, it comes from somewhere. So maybe it coincides with, they're like, we should, you know, their board of directors says we should do this because most of us think it's the right thing. Great. But if it also helps us make money, it's better. If it costs us money, then they're probably not going to do it. So you just have to keep that in mind. Unless it's us, but I mean, there are some companies out there that do specific things that, you know, they could make more money if they did it X way and they do it Y way instead. And that is, you know, I think you just have to look at it deeper than that and not take that's the internet as a whole. Don't take anything at face value.
It's more meaningful if it costs some money.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
If they
Easy to do
choose to
something
do it,
that's-
then I'll respect them if they're not really getting anything out of it and that's actually, you know, harming them.
All right, this should be its own show, because
Yeah, like
I think
we
every
go
Yeah.
generation
down
You
the
guys stumped me.
has a perspective on this, and it's something I need to think about more too. Which I'm not someone who's going to go to Disney or not based on what they think politically, right? I'm going to go based on what I expect from them as an entertainment business. If I'm entertained, great. If I'm not, then I'll do something different. But I do find it a growing trend, and something that, back to being relevant for this show, that your generation wants, not only for the brands they use, but from their employers. So I think you guys want that from your employers, right? You want them to take a stand.
You want to work for a company that you feel like matches your own values, and that's what I see that a lot with Gen Z and millennials too.
I mean, me personally, political wise, I don't care if my employer doesn't have the same political stance as me, and as long as they don't care about what my political stance is, then that's great. But I know some people feel like different, so maybe we could talk about it next show.
Yep, we can. All right. Did we cover all of these? We're not getting any
I
comments
know,
today,
get me
Ashley.
a
I don't
harder
know.
one.
Maybe we need to promote better. We need to lead with our controversial topic, right? Maybe that's what we'll do next week, is really put that out there, and then see if we can get more interaction as we go. But
All right.
I think you did a good job of
You stood up for
representing your generation today. We didn't really get to take any hard shots at you.
I know.
Yeah, you had a justification at least for everything. Even if none of it was taking responsibility for yourself, you were like, well, it's the millennials' fault.
But I will say, Ashley, the thing that
Just
people have
like one.
commented to me the most about, I was at a party, a high school graduation party over the weekend, and multiple people brought up the REM comment.
Ugh.
That and that's been pretty popular among my friends. So
Oh man.
Yeah, we're gonna have to play a game. Maybe that's what we need to do. Of at some point, have every episode be
Do a generational
list of-
trivia.
yeah, do
I-
you know these
I
bands?
wonder what the poll would be in like between Gen Zs. Who knows who REM is? I wonder how many Gen Zs actually know who REM is. I mean, once you played the song, I was like, I might honestly, again, like, I don't have the best memory when it comes to remembering band names and putting like a band to a song or a song to a band. So, I mean, as soon as you played the song, I was like, wait, I've heard this before. I know this song. I just didn't know that it was REM, I guess. So.
All right, so we let her off the hook with that, Peter.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm on fire today. What else you guys got?
You are.
Nothing else?
You've done great. So
I gotta say, I do know how to write a check too. Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So
But at
should we
first I
say
didn't.
should we say goodbye with shiny happy people playing
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
in the background and sign off for today? I don't know. This is okay.
All right.
Enjoy that as we say goodbye and see you next week.
I hear it. Look at that music video. Oh,
that's
man.
Kate Pearson from the B-52s. You know who the B-52s are?
Love it.
No.
Actually, you don't know the B-52s either? All right.
No.
Then we're officially done.
All
All right. Goodbye.
right, see
Bye,
you
guys.
guys.